Weencast, a Ween podcast with Rory Gibbons and Shane Prutzman.
Hey everybody, this is Shane.
This is Rory.
And this is Weencast. And we welcome you. We are going to...
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Well, it's evening for us whenever you're listening to this. Good morning, good day, good evening, whatever it is. We're going to take a break from talking about our archive shows, so to speak, are the shows from our youth, and we're going to talk about a current show that we were able to make it to, or at least Rory was able to make it to. This is from last weekend, actually, July 27th in Pittsburgh at the Stage AE.
Last Friday.
Couple of shout-outs real quick. I had mentioned on our last episode that that was the first new episode to be available on iTunes. So this will be episode 7, the second new episode on iTunes. We did get a couple of reviews and some people leaving the star ratings and stuff. So that's awesome. We love seeing those. So if you're listening to this, please write a review. It doesn't cost anything. It's fun. It's free.
And thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for those that have.
Thank you, everybody who has wrote the reviews and given us the stars. We really appreciate that. Couple of shout-outs real quick, specifically about this show. I had seen there was a Facebook group for a meetup before this show, and was kind of messaging back and forth with a girl named Jamie, who had sort of like head up the meetup before this show, and I had said, my friends are coming, and would it be cool if they met up with you guys? And she was totally cool about it, and was just like, yeah, of course, like I made stickers, like I'll hook them up with stickers. So I just wanted to say, and I know you guys didn't, we'll get to that in a second, but you guys weren't able to actually make it to the meetup, which is all good, but I just wanted to say thank you to her and the other people who put together that meetup. So that was really cool of them to just, sort of like reach out to everybody and just be like, hey, meet up before the show and have a couple of drinks and, shoot the shit and whatnot. So shout out to Jamie for doing that. And
and sorry we couldn't get there.
Yeah, we'll get to
that, Jamie.
We'll get to that in a minute. And also shout out to Jordan, who was at this show, who has I kind of joke around with Jordan on Facebook Messenger as kind of like our fan. He's like the one guy who's been like listening to this show since the beginning on YouTube and sent me some comments, made some comments on YouTube, and he made it to this show in Pittsburgh, and he said it was the most technically proficient he's seen so far. So shout out to Jordan for making it to this one. So
rock and roll.
So yeah, do you want to talk about getting to the show?
Sure. So we got the tickets, months ago, like whenever they came out. We just went ahead and got them early because we knew we were coming. But unfortunately, Shane wasn't able to make this show. But I live down in Charlottesville, Virginia now, and so me, Amy, my wife, and Mike, my brother-in-law, all got to get up to the show, and we, we'll tell the whole tale, but I don't know if you wanted to share, anything about
yes. So basically,
your absence.
So I wasn't able to make it to this one because my wife is pregnant, and what can I say? She kind of put the guilt trip on me. You can't leave a pregnant lady home by herself. And we have 2 children. We have twin boys already. So it's like, am I really going to leave her home by herself with twin boy pregnant? Plus, it actually kind of wound up working out that we had her like full body scan that day, ultrasound. So we were doing that pretty much all afternoon. and turns out we're having a little girl this time, and everything looks great. So it's a weenette. It's a weenette this time. So I already have a Diener and a Jeaner, and now I'm gonna have a weenette. So.
Well, congratulations again, dude.
Thank you.
That's great news. So anyway, I had to carry the torch, but I was ably. I had great companions. Amy and Mike and I drove up from Charlottesville. It ended up being a pretty long drive because Mike's buddy Damien lives up in Huntingdon area of central Pennsylvania, and so we picked him up in Hollidaysburg, which is outside of Altoona, and he kind of met us part of the way, but it was definitely still out of the way, and every little bit adds up. And so on the way up, it was a heavy rainstorms. It was anyone else who's in the Mid-Atlantic area knows that it's been a really rainy spring and summer. So it was the end of a rainy week, and we were caught in massive downpours on the drive up. So all told, it probably took 7.5 hours to get to Pittsburgh from Seville, which is definitely a lot longer than it would if we just went straight and didn't have any weather issues. But nevertheless, Amy and I got a hotel downtown in the Strip District, right next to Lydia Bassianich's restaurant, which was really cool. If you don't know Lydia, she makes an amazing marinara. So I'm going to give a shout out to Lydia because her marinara sauce is the bomb, and you can go online and find a replica of her recipe, which is just a great traditional Italian marinara with San Marzano tomatoes. But anyway, she was right next to us.
Sounds good.
So that was cool. Sadly, we did not go to the restaurant because it was reservations only, and we didn't have a reservation, and we were just like weenheads. So we walked across sort of downtown and went across the bridge to the venue, and it's a really nice venue. The Stage AE, which is American Eagle, which I didn't know until I got there, by the way. So it's clearly being paid for by them, or sponsored by them, and it's a sandwich between Heinz Field, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers football field, and then PNC Park, I think is the name of the other one, and that's the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Right.
So it's down in like that sports area, and there's just like some bars and breweries and things like all in that area. So it's kind of a happening place in terms of a lot of people being around and people partying. And there was a Pirates game going on, so it was definitely pretty busy down there. Because of how long the ride took, we basically decided just to get like a dinner and then like head on over to the venue. So it was it was a long drive, and so again, sorry that we couldn't make the meetup. It just kind of didn't work out, but nevertheless we got there, and the rain pulled out, and so the weather through the night just got really nice, and it was a beautiful night for an outdoor show.
Yeah, I mean, you guys really lucked out weather-wise. I mean, I know for here in the Lancaster area that day, it was really like hot in the afternoon at least, and it was like it's either going to be pouring down rain or it's going to be like crazy hot. But it seemed like it was nice out there, which is awesome. So you guys really lucked out.
Yeah, the storms were heading east, so we got hit on the way there, but they weren't there when we got to the venue. So it was great. So it was almost a full moon, so that was coming up over the city skyline. It's a really nice spot. Pittsburgh's a beautiful city. If you haven't been there,
yeah,
people out there, you can do some Google image search of Pittsburgh skyline views and stuff, and it's if you like city skylines, it's definitely a beautiful one.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how, listening to you describe that. I mean, we've been to Pittsburgh a couple of times to see them, years ago. It's been a few years now since I've been out there, but I don't think I've ever really been to, the area that you're talking about. I've never been to see a Pirates game.
Yeah.
And, I'll have to check that out sometime. That really sounds awesome.
I gotta say, I don't think I've been to that spot either. The other Pittsburgh shows, I'd have to look at a map to see where the venues were, but I just seem to remember them being more in like grittier parts of Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I guess.
like more of like in the city, like
Yeah.
totally.
But yeah, so I thought it was a great outdoor venue. It holds several thousand people. I bet there was a couple thousand people there that night. But it wasn't over full, so maybe I'm overestimating the numbers. But there's an area of concrete, a big area of concrete, I guess, up where people can stand near the stage. But it's pretty big. It goes back, 100 feet or so, and then there's a big area of grass. So the concrete area was pretty packed, but the grass area was relatively open, where people could kind of dance around and stuff. So, and combined with the weather, I mean, it was just a beautiful night for a show, is what I would say. But yeah, Pittsburgh's beautiful. The moon was like coming up over the city skyline and being mixed in with the clouds, so it was kind of cool as they were playing and jamming. So, I think it's an appropriate evening for Ween. But yeah, so that kind of sets us up for the the show as far as the lead up to it. We went to some brewery for a meal. The name it escapes me at the moment, but it was down pretty close to the venue, and and then we just went in, and that was that.
Did you get to talk to anybody who like was obviously going to the show or anything like that?
Oh, you know what? Yes. So actually, thank you for mentioning that. On the way in, Amy was driving one of the legs, so I was on Facebook and I posted like, Ween Pittsburgh style, like I'm going down, and a buddy of mine from State College back in the day, like a friend of a friend that we used to hang out and play guitar a little bit here and there, and they had a cool octagon house. Brian Smith, Brian, excuse me, and anyway, he Facebook back and was like, oh, I'll see you there. So I was like, oh, cool, you're gonna be there. So we actually ran into him in line, and so that was cool. I hadn't seen him in like a really long time. We just sort of chat back and forth on Facebook from time to time, and but yeah, that was cool. That was the neat thing about every time I go to a Pittsburgh show, I'm reminded like that's kind of like the big city that's closest to State College. So I still have like a good amount of like friends and people I know in State College. And it always, go figure, it always seems like when you go to a Ween show in Pittsburgh, I always run into someone from State College area. So it's kind of funny that happened again. And it also happened to Mike, actually. I don't remember the name of his buddies, but him and Damien were, kind of hanging out. And they ended up running into a couple of their buddies from State College too. So that's always makes for an interesting like reunion, and it's always like in a Ween show in Pittsburgh. So I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome that like, you can go that long without seeing somebody from, like your college days, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I'm gonna be at that show too. Oh, no shit, like I'll see you then. You know what I mean? Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I think Ween is the great mixing bowl of peace and love. But yeah, so anyway, so do you want to run down the set list, and then we can, kind of talk about some of the highlights and our thoughts about this show.
Okay.
I will say really quick, this was a good show.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't get to listen to it that night. I probably could have caught like a live stream of it, but I thought, you know what, just save it for tomorrow, because I guarantee that it would be up, and of course it was. So I was able to listen to it the next day on YouTube, and I could tell I was reading the set list as it was happening, and I thought the same thing, like, wow, this show is fucking awesome. But I'll run down the set list and then we can talk about the song. Okay.
Yeah, God bless Tim Bartel. I believe that's the YouTube poster.
There was
if I'm looking at this correctly.
There was a few of them, but yeah, that if you want to give them a shout out, totally.
Well, that's the one I'm looking at right now, man.
Okay. All right, so I'll run down the set list here. Nan, Transdermal Celebration, Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy, Beacon Light, Voodoo Lady, Push a Little Daisies, With My Own Bare Hands, Learning to Love, Rights to the Ways and the Rules of the World, I Got's a Weasel, Wayne's Pet Youngin', Puerto Rican Power, You Fucked Up, Zoloft, Touch My Tutor, Spinal Meningitis, Stay Forever, She's Your Baby, Laura, HIV Song / AIDS, Stallion Part 1, Polka Dot Tail, Pumpin' for the Man, The Mollusk, and then for the encore, Buckingham Green, You Were the Fool, and Someday.
Wow. Whoa.
That is a pretty sweet set list. I mean, I do have to say, and I haven't been like studying, the recent shows. I've been kind of like keeping an eye on them here and there, and just kind of like what they're playing and what they're not. And like all of the set lists have been good, but this is no exception by any means.
Yeah, this is great. There are a good amount of pretty rare, pretty uncommon songs, and a good amount of old school Ween going on in this show.
Yeah,
a lot to commend it here.
Rory and I were talking. I mean, I don't know if you want to save this for the end or not, but we were sort of talking about like what we consider to be like old school songs, and for me, it's just I don't even have to think about it. I don't know exactly what it is, but to me, it's like if you were to say what would you consider to be old school Ween, I would say anything pre Chocolate and Cheese.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's old school, OG Ween, pre Chocolate and
God,
Cheese.
Ween, Satan, The Pod, and Pure Guava. Anything from those 3 records, I would consider to be old school shit. Something about there's something about those albums that just has a very like homemade, unpolished kind of grit, to them. Not to say that they sound shitty or anything like that, like they're a little bit more lo-fi, so to speak, than some of the later albums. But there's just a difference when you get to Chocolate and Cheese. Is a much more polished, well, produced sort of thing. Not saying it's better, worse, whatever, but just the songs from like that era of before Chocolate and Cheese are just, that's like the old school shit. And this show, it just seems like, when I was listening to it the next day, just like old song. I mean, it just, a shitload of old songs,
Yeah, dude. So let me kind of go through roughly in order of some of the kind of highlights, and we can kind of
totally
touch base about some of these songs. So the first big one for me is Beacon Light. I love that song. It's cool. It's on the X-Files soundtrack. And which always like surprises people when they're like, "Oh, Ween's on the X-Files soundtrack," and it's a rare song. This is the 40th time. This is the 41st time I think that it was ever played, and only like I think the second time that I ever heard it live. So I just think it's great, and it was awesome because right before this song, Diener is like, "All right, you rock and roll people." I think it was Diener, and then they jam out Beacon Light, and it's just like so brilliant. It's also great because there was a mix of people in the crowd. It was a pretty mellow crowd, and it was a mix of there were some people there that I swear weren't 21, but they were still drinking, and I guess I'm a bad judge of age anymore, but there was definitely some people that were there that would have been like so young that they totally didn't know them pre-breakup, and so they're like new fans to it. And then there's also a lot of the old heads going around.
Yeah.
There were some people in front of me that it looked like it was kind of a bunch of older people that were maybe just there because like this younger couple like invited their like parents to come along, like they didn't know what was going on. And so you had this mix of newbies and nobies and old school heads, I would say. And like, so when you get songs like Beacon Light and these more uncommon songs, it's kind of fun to like look around and you see like, who's recognizing these songs, like that night they didn't just play, La Cucaracha, and so anyway, so Beacon Light's great. I had been looking at a few of the recent set lists, and I saw that a few nights before this show, they had done a cover of The Doors. What am I? Now I'm blanking on the actual song.
L.A.
But
Woman.
but at any yeah, L.A. Woman. Thank you, man. So anyway, so right before Learning to Love, they teased a little Dancing Days by Led Zeppelin, and so I was like, oh no, they don't, they won't do it, and it was funny, I thought, because they were sort of noodling around with it. I think just, obviously they didn't play the song, so they were just fucking around for a second. And it was like they were building it up to play it, and then it was almost like they simultaneous were just like, yeah, we're not fucking doing that. And so it was just fun. But they did a little Dancing Days tease, which is cool. And then after Learning to Love, you go into like an amazing old school like run of songs, like a rock block, and just like Right to the Ways and the Rules of the World was like, it's always been one of my like favorite Ween songs. It's like so like kind of out there and trippy, and like sort of hits you on a lot of different levels. And this is like the 16th time that was ever played live, and like I'm pretty sure the first time I ever heard it.
Yeah.
So that was, and I got to Weasel, Wayne's Pet Youngin', damn, and then even Puerto Rican Power is not the most common song live, although a lot more common than those three.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
But
you got Rights to the Ways of the Rules of the World, which is like, back in our heyday, the shows that we were talking about, 98, 99, 2000, I mean, you just didn't hear something like that. We were talking about this the other day in preparation for this podcast too, about some of the older songs, and like you can tell that since they've come back, they've definitely been trying to like tap into some of those like older songs and sort of like bring them back to life, and that's a perfect example. Like, I mean, you can see it on
absolutely.
You can see it on Brown Bass. I mean, like you just said, 16 times. I mean, that's insane. Like that's such a low number of times that's been played, and it's like, and it sounds fucking great. You know what I mean? Like, they bring that old school shit to life. It's something that's so kind of, like we said about the pod, like a lo-fi, but it sounds awesome. And just not to get off on
they play this. These songs really play well live.
Yeah, well, we'll get back to.
They make the album really come alive.
Right, we'll get back to that after we talk about the set list. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and that was one of the main takeaways that I had too when listening to this the next day. Is like, man, that's a fucking rock block. It's like, it starts off with I Got a Weasel, straight into Wayne's Pet Youngin', Puerto Rican Power, You Fucked Up. It's like, man, that's a fucking old school like rock block. Like it just knocks you on your ass.
Yeah. Puerto Rican Power is great because, that's when you're like seeing like the older squares nearby, like in front of us, kind of be like, what's going on here? Yeah. Like they're not quite sure if they're at the right place, and then follow that up with like, You Fucked Up.
Yeah, no one's...
Touch My Tutor is a favorite of mine for being live. I think that's fantastic, but that's also another one where it's like, I think it's funny when I'm sort of doing my like awkward white guy gesticulation dance that you do when you watch Ween. When I'm doing that and just like exalting to the sky to Touch My Tutor and stuff as I'm like singing along and jamming, I just think it's hilarious to see like a square sort of look over and be like, where am I at?
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah, it's like, I would say to someone like that, no one said it wasn't going to be offensive. You know what I mean? That's
But this is what's brilliant, and so they follow up with some more rarities like Stay Forever, which is one of my favorite Ween songs. That may be cliche. I don't know. It may be too cool for school to put a White Pepper song up there as one of my faves. But yeah, Stay Forever and She's Your Baby. I mean, it's just beautiful live stuff. And then Laura, which is like a very rare tune.
Yeah.
And just like great. and yeah. So I'm not the HIV song. Not to rain on anyone's, not to be negative, but that's one of my throwaway. But that's all good. I know they played a lot. But then you got like the Stallion Part 1, which is also pretty rare. Polka Dot Tail, which is, I think, a funny song, and it was only played 34. A funny song in that it was only played 34 times.
Yeah, you certainly don't hear that.
It's Polka Dot Tail.
Yeah, you definitely don't hear that every show. Definitely not.
Yeah. So anyway, just briefly, so we're not just being redundant, but and then you got Pumpin' for the Man, which I think is always fun to watch live, and in the encore, always got to mention Buckingham Green because I love it, and You Were the Fool was one of the highlights of the night. You Were the Fool was awesome, and then they finish up with Someday, which is I guess sort of played more so recently, but yeah, dude, so. Right up top, I would say my biggest highlights are Right to the Ways and the Rules of the World and You Were the Fool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right to the Ways that's probably a top 5 like Ween live moment for me. Like
awesome.
And then You Were the Fool was great. Like Golden Country greats, and so one of the things that we were noting as we were discussing this show the other day is that not only are they like playing a lot of old school songs, but also on like a lot of the albums they were choosing songs that weren't like the normal ones to play. Like they only played, I think, was it one song from Golden Country Greats all night, and that was You Were the Fool.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that was, because this is such a rare song, and for that to be the representative from from Golden Country Greats on that show, I mean, that's just brilliant. That's just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, You Were the Fool, I would definitely say is sort of like the biggest like highlight of this show. Right to the Ways, obviously that's like the most rare, but like You Were the Fool, and like the fact that they had that like intro to it, where it's just kind of like a country, like slow, like jam, and it's kind of like, what are they getting to here? And then they just start into like what you would recognize, and it's like, oh, sweet, you know what I mean? Like that's awesome. So that's definitely it. Yeah, I would agree with you there. Like that's definitely the highlight of that show. At least it was for me. Like listening back to it, it's like, oh, dude, that's fucking sweet.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Rice of Ways. Voodoo Lady is really jammed out, really pretty hardcore. That was like the big jam of the night, I think. And that was really cool. One of the things I would say is that there weren't a lot of like the bigger jams. The show, when you don't include the short set break that they take between the sets, and then like a little bit of the beginning and end of the video, it's like 2 hours and 1 minute long. So at this point, I'm not going to complain about that, but could have done like one or two more like jam songs, like could have been like made it like a 2 hour and 15 minute show and maybe thrown in like Buenos Stars Amigo or something, like whatever. Like that would be my only thing to say, because you got so many like rare songs and a lot of old school stuff, and then like sort of not just playing like, I can think of some of the like popular songs that they just were like, we're not playing tonight, Blarney Stone or Piss Up a Rope, it's like nah, man, we're gonna play some rockin' shit, like not that stuff's not rockin', but that stuff's more kind of common and just like the regular thing that you hear at a lot of shows. But yeah, dude,
like two things I'll say about like the shows that we've been to since they've been back, I think are all like common things. First of all, like we were talking about, definitely a choice to bring back some old shit. Man is the opener. They did that when we went to the Philly show a couple years ago at Penn's Landing. And I mean, you know, there again, it's like you didn't see that before. You know what I mean? You didn't see a song like Nan, you know, an old school fucking tune. I mean, yeah, they played it, but it's like that would never just start the show, you know, before you know, before they came back. So it's like stuff like that. You know, definitely like, you know, bringing back some of those old school songs, and then definitely let's get as many songs in there as possible, rather than like the half-hour long like LMLIP or, you know, Buenos Tardes, you know, or whatever.
The artifact of the past.
You know, it's like it's all just based on what you're into. Would you rather, you know, them play a crazy like long jam out, or would you rather hear like 2-3 songs, you know, in its place, or, you know, 4 or 5 songs in its place, depending on how long it is. You know, so it's like,
well,
go ahead.
That's why I advocate for just, you know, like, hey, give me like one more song and make it like an 8-minute long, you know, Buenos Tardes Amigo, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like 20, 25 minutes, but, you know, maybe like 10 minutes. Yeah.
You know, throw in a can't put my finger on it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I just made a couple of notes about some of the other tunes. You had mentioned Stay Forever and She's Your Baby. That is just, you know, there again, it's like you got 2 White Pepper songs, and it's those 2 back to back. You know, that's fucking insane. I mean, no Bananas and Blow, no, you know, it's like nothing that's like the common tunes from the Grobe, Exactly Where I'm At. You know, like there was a time where like Exactly Where I'm At was like the opener like every night. You know what I mean? And I love that tune too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting it down. But it's like when they played those, and I was reading along with the set list as it was happening, I was like, that's pretty fucking cool. Both of those songs back to back. And when you're looking at Brown Bass at the, you know, the breakdown of the set list, that's the only White Pepper songs. It's like, damn, that's fucking cool. You know?
Yeah, so exactly, you know? Like, it's like that was the only White Pepper song. You Were the Fool's the only Gold Country Grade song. It's like, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, me like you.
But definitely some cool little jams thrown in there. Beacon Light had a cool jam at the end.
Yes.
And Zoloft has like a cool like spacey jam at the end of it. You know, jam that fucker out. So that's really cool. You had mentioned HIV, which I agree with you. It's kind of like one of those things that, you know, you hear that every night, but that was even like a little bit different. That had more of like a slow and like spacey kind of thing to it. So that's cool. And then also, Polka Dot Tail, you know, that has a bit of a mini jam.
Yeah, man.
In it. So it's like you got some mini jams, you know, in there, which is cool. But yeah, I mean that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine, man.
I was just gonna say, like, not to be repeating ourselves, but it's really interesting when you look at the breakdown of this show. So on Brown Bass, you got 4 songs from Pure Guava. You got 4 songs from God Ween Satan. You got 3 songs from The Pod, right? 3 songs from Chocolate and Cheese, 2 from La Cucaracha, 2 from Quebec, and 2 from White Pepper. So it's almost like the opposite of what you would be expecting, you know?
Yes.
Like, we were talking about this the other day, and not to keep bringing up The Pod, but it's like, The Pod was always sort of like the kind of like forgotten like Ween album, you know, back in the old days. It was like, you heard live Dr. Rock, Pork Roll, Egg and Cheese, and maybe Frank. You know, that was even, you know, kind of like rare back in those days. That was pretty much it. You know, it wasn't until the later years when they started breaking out stuff like, you know, Captain Fantasy, Strap on That Jammy Pack, you know, and those were fucking rare. You know what I mean? It was like, it was really just like Dr. Rock and Pork Roll, Egg and Cheese is really the only songs that they played on like a regular basis from The Pod, right? So, like, you look at this show, it's like you got 3 songs from the pod, and they're not those 2. Those 2 are not played at all. So, like, just that by itself, it's like, that's really fucking cool. You know? So that's 3 songs that, like, to me, just jump out at me. Right to the Ways of the Rules of the World, Stallion Part 1, and Laura. You know what I mean? Yeah. I remember the first time that we ever heard that live, and it was just like, what the fuck? You know, like, that's, you know, still pretty rare. You know? Same thing with, you know, the Pure Guava tunes. They're not quite as rare, but for you to get 4 from Pure Guava, 4 from God, Ween, Satan, and 3 from the pod, you know, it's like, that's 11 songs from the first
and yet
3
not
albums.
Have it not also be the most common ones played from those albums.
Right.
All of it.
Right. You know, so it's like, you can't tell me that they're not making an effort to play, like, the older shit. You know? So it's like, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Ween. Thank you, Ween, for breaking out some old school stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I appreciate the work that you're putting into this. So yeah, dude, I would say that definitely, like, an overwhelmingly amazing show with very little downside. It was a beautiful night for a show, so just, it was cool. Some other kind of little details, I guess. Things that I made some notes about, things I remembered from the night. We were back in the grass, and so they had these cool, like, mobile porta potties that are like trailers that you can, like, hitch to the back of a pickup truck or something and, like, take it away, and they're almost like fancy porta potties, but you go in there and they actually have running water and paper towels and, you know,
cool.
blah blah blah. But then they sort of wafted the smell of porta potty, like, into the grass area, like, most of the show. So I was kind of like, it was funny because I was kind of like I was in, like, a brown mist fog, you know, like a brown shit fog, and it made me think about, like, they had, like, an idea to patent, like, a machine that would spray, like, a mist of shit over everyone. And it also, way back in the day, I lived in a cabin for a year, and we had a composting toilet. And the composting toilet was fine when we were just home by ourselves, but anytime we had guests over for a party, that's totally how it smelled. Like, it just reeked everywhere of terrible, like, shit. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But besides that, that was cool. There was a T-Rex balloon. I believe it was, like, set up at the drums, and Claude, like, launches it into the crowd at the beginning. That got batted around for a while. Lost its leg.
Lost its leg. Point.
But I was sort of wondering if anyone out there. My question was, did it survive the night? If anyone has any information on the whereabouts of the T-Rex, please chime in. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's funny that you. It's
because I don't remember what came of it. At one point, I was like, "Oh, it's missing one of its legs," and then that was sort of the last time I sort of kept track of it.
The T-Rex who has lost his leg has lost her leg.
Yeah, you can make a song about that.
It's funny how you mentioned that because when I went on YouTube the next morning and had put in, just like Ween, Pittsburgh, and started going through the videos that were posted, like, the first thing that I saw was like the screen grab of that T-Rex balloon, like, in the air. It was just like someone who was filming with their phone or whatever had gotten, like, a perfect image of, like, that, like, T-Rex balloon. It's like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't expect that, but all right. And then, like, as soon as I started the video, you saw Claude was, like, handling the T-Rex balloon and just, like, sort of, wafted it out into the crowd. Like, all right, there he is,
Yeah, unless I'm misremembering, it was at the drums. I sort of went to get a pretzel and was in line to get a pretzel when they, like, actually came out and were like, boo-doo, yeah, and everyone's cheering.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually see the T-Rex Claude moment, I don't think, because I was getting a pretzel. But
I would opt for the pretzel too.
Well, I didn't know. I wasn't sure exactly when the show was going to start. You got to get the food while you can. But
see, my question would be more so is like who attached the T-Rex to the balloon, and like what is the actual origin of the T-Rex?
The T-Rex was the balloon, I thought.
No, I know it's a balloon, but like why was it at the drums? Like at the beginning of the show, was it? So you're saying it was attached to the drums that you could tell?
Well, it was like up there, like from the grass. I seem to remember it just like sitting like it was going to play the drums, which is actually kind of funny because T-Rexes have really short arms.
Okay, so maybe that was the joke. Like instead of Claude, we're gonna have T-Rex on drums.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. So another sort of moment that I remember from the show. So I think it was after I got a weasel. It's hard to hear exactly what Diener's saying on the recording, but he's like, we're from New Hope, Pennsylvania, and then he says like reigning Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
And so that was great because there were some people in the crowd jeering because, New Hope's by Philadelphia, and that's Eagles. So the Eagles are the reigning Super Bowl champions, and they're my team. But of course we are in Pittsburgh, so it's like Steelers country, and it's like if you know anything about Pennsylvania, it's a little they don't play each other every year or anything, but it's like a Western PA Steelers, Southeastern PA. Most of Pennsylvania's Steelers, but then Southeastern Pennsylvania's Eagles, and so it's like that. One side of the state's one side's the other. So that was cool seeing Diener like needle the crowd a little bit because he was happy to get a little jab in about it.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, that you went to Penn State. So, I remember that was sort of like the first time I ever was in like Steelers country, because that's more so like Western PA than it is. I've lived in Eastern PA my whole life. So it's like pretty much everybody is an Eagles fan. It's rare that it's more rare that you have a Steelers fan or someone who's like a Steelers guy or whatever. It does happen, but the first couple times I was out in like the State College area, it's like that's a little bit more west, and that's when it's I first learned about like these people could be like Steelers fans. But anyway, that's definitely in Pittsburgh, so they're not gonna be down with the Eagles.
Yeah, but what can you do?
Right.
We are the champs.
Yeah, you got to get a jab in there if you can.
But yeah, man, I think we kind of hit up a lot of the highlights, and it was cool. And so we rolled out. The crowd had a cool, chill vibe. I felt like, and so getting in and out, and the venue was very spacious, so getting in and out wasn't really that big a deal, and it wasn't, it was, I commend it as far as that goes as well. The whole area was super crowded because the Pirates game was letting out or whatever, and so there's people everywhere. So we ended up just walking back to our hotel, which is a bit of a walk because it was across downtown. But instead of getting a taxi or an Uber or something. But the nice thing is when you're downtown, it makes any of the walks doable ultimately. It was reminiscent, Shane, of a few years back when we were in Columbus, and we walked all the way across town.
Yeah, that was a good night. We'll talk about that show at some point, too.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that eventually, but we're crossing all the way across town.
That was a good night.
So yeah, dude. I don't know if you have anything else to add. I feel pretty good there.
No, I mean, it was definitely a solid show. I'm sorry I couldn't make it again, but yeah, I mean, I listened to it the next day, and it was just like, solid show. I mean, definitely you got a couple. Yeah, dude,
it's all good.
You got a couple of rarities in there. Like I said, a lot of old school shit. There was one of the nights previous to this. I'm not sure which one it was. And we don't like to do this because we don't like to talk about, other nights besides the show that we're, discussing. But one of the nights before this, they had played an encore of all 5 of the Stallion songs, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I was like, oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do that in Pittsburgh.
Like all requests live.
Yeah, right, exactly, like all requests live. But honestly, like I probably would have rather seen this show. It's like the Stallions are, like that's awesome. Just that they played them all in order like that. But I think I would have rather have seen a show like this, where it's just, the varied songs and, like we were talking about, a little bit of everything, especially some old school shit that you don't always hear,
Yeah, dude. What I would say is though, I would rather go to both.
Yeah.
Like it's too bad. I can't go to see more Ween shows.
It's too bad. Yeah,
days.
it's too bad we can't just go to all of them.
Because I'll tell you what, it is really cool to have the shows be so different, so that you can go to a few in a short period of time, and it's a hopeful thing to be like, yeah, it's not going to be the same show, because not to diss any shows, but there's times where you can kind of like look at the set list from like a whole week's worth of shows or a whole month's worth of shows and see like almost all the same songs every night, like it happens, like that's part of touring, like it's all good.
Well,
you got like but nowadays that it's like it's great, every show is different. Like this is the third show of since they started the reunion that I've seen, and everyone that I've seen since then has been like totally different than the next.
Yeah, totally. Well, this is a bigger topic. I know some people get like up in arms about and say like, well, Ween is not a jam band. Like I know that Mickey has even said that himself. Like, we're not a jam band. But one of the things that they
might not be a jam band, but I love to hear them jam.
Yeah, they certainly know how to jam. That's for sure, don't they? But one of the things I think that they have figured out, years ago, but especially now since they've been back, is like we're saying, make it different, and that's kind of that's a little jam band esque, if I may, make it different every night, you know what I mean, and people will want to keep
as
coming.
we discussed, there weren't a lot of jams. There weren't a lot of jams this night.
Well, I mean, you still had some mini jams, here and there, some extended outros, if you will.
They didn't cover that Fish song, Roses Are Free.
Oh yeah, right. I was waiting for them to cover Fish when I was listening to it. Yeah. And that didn't happen,
speaking of that reminds me that there were some dudes sitting behind me, and before the show they were chatting about how cool it is that Fish covers Ween songs. And I didn't disagree.
Okay, well, at least they respected the fact that it was, Fish covering Ween and not the other way around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I kid. It's all good. It's all good. All peace, all love. It's like the bottle of Bronner's soap. All peace, all love.
Yeah, I mean,
love is the way.
I like some jam bands. I'm not gonna lie. You know what I mean? Like I don't, But yeah, it's like whether you consider them a jam band or not, it's like I think that they use that to their advantage at least. Keep it different, keep a different set list every night, make a different set list every night. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it shows in a show like this. And it's definitely...
man. It's great, and it. I would say that ultimately, and this is a whole other sort of big topic. And also, like, not really worth exploring that much because it's so obvious. But, like, Ween occupies its own niche in music. So,
totally.
So that's what they do. They jam sometimes. They have all these, like, rock blocks. And then they're like, we're going to mix it up and make sure all these shows are different. Like, they're going to do their own thing.
Well, you can't even... it's like over the years, when you're talking to someone about music and you tell them that, your favorite band is Ween, and they say like, well, what kind of music is that? It's always just kind of like, you can't really, they just are what they are. You can't really like categorize.
Well, what I would say? I would say by and large, listen to this show because this show has a wide range of the Ween, and keep an open mind because some of it may be a little offensive to you, but then, then you have these just like beautiful songs, and so introspective and thoughtful, thought-provoking. So they really defy any sort of single description. But I don't want to get in on that because that's just sort of like, I'm not here to, sort of, just, lavish praise on Ween all night.
I know what you mean, though. I mean,
yeah,
it's we talked about, okay, there might be some songs on this set list that are a little quote-unquote offensive, but just like we were talking about, She's Your Baby and Stay Forever, You Were the Fool, that's like 3 of like the most beautiful, Ween songs that I could think of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
So you got those in there at this show as well. So it's like a little bit of everything from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So I think that's a great way to kind of sum it up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll sort of wrap it up. So please hit us up. Okay. It's weencastpodcast@gmail. On Twitter, the same.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you guys think. If anyone was at the show, chime in with other things that you noticed or other highlights that you thought were cool. We'd love to hear you guys.
Yeah, please. It's Twitter @weencastpodcast. Like we had mentioned at the beginning of the show, iTunes, obviously. YouTube, we'll still make a YouTube video of the show. Archive.org. I have to do a little bit of research on the whole Stitcher thing. I've never been a Stitcher guy. I've always just used iTunes, but I keep hearing about Stitcher. It's like, okay, Stitcher. So I know
Stitcher, Stifler.
Yeah,
what are you saying?
I don't know. It's Stitcher is another like podcasting service. I know that about it, but I've never spent 1 second looking at like their website or anything. I know absolutely nothing about it. But we're gonna look into that next.
We're out and about. Suffice it to say, we're out and about.
If you can't download this podcast somewhere, I'll send you the fucking thing. I'll send you the fucking files. Okay.
But yeah, so we thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate the feedback and the positive comments and stuff. It's cool. We're glad that people enjoy, hearing about the shows, and it's cool. The Ween community will thrive.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, I can't get enough of seeing, the comments and just getting, getting some people talking to me on Facebook and stuff and sending me their thoughts. I mean, I just love it. I can't get enough of it. So please, 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 hit us up. Give us your thoughts. Give us your takes on this show or, some of the past shows that we've talked about or just anything about Ween, hook us up. So
yeah, and keep an eye on our Twitter or Facebook, and because we'll be putting out another podcast here in the next few weeks, hopefully, and you'll have to wait and see what show we went to next.
Yeah,
when we dive back into the chronology back in the day.
Totally.
That was
all right. Well, unless you have anything else, Rory.
Yeah, man. I think. I bid everyone good night, and thank you for listening.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We out.